All right.
Awesome.
Good morning and welcome to YAP. Welcome to another installment of YAP. I think today is the 93rd installment of YAP. We're fast approaching 100, the anniversary. Today I'm joined by two lovely hosts. First, to my right is Curls.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
There we go.
No.
I like the first one.
Wait, I can't hear it.
Oh, man.
Shame.
And then to my front, the front of me is Nell, who was the host of yesterday's YAP.
I just love that he called us lovely.
Yeah.
On camera.
Outside of this, he's just
outside.
roasting us.
No, I think I have a different relationship with you than I have with you.
I like that
It's
you
not
two,
universal.
you two have got this like sibling rivalry. Not rivalry.
We
That's the wrong
do.
word. Like,
She thinks it's a rivalry.
Yeah,
I'm winning.
but it's
That's
Oh.
bull.
but it's healthy. It's healthy. It's
Yeah.
good. It's good. It's good. I like it.
Curls, how you feeling?
Yeah, good man. I'm
you doing?
good, mate. Yeah, I'm
Yeah?
good. It's a bit cold outside, but I'm feeling good. Got my coffee. Got my water.
Yeah.
Got two of my favorite colleagues. Like,
Ah,
we're good to
stop
go.
it. Stop
Are we just,
Stop
are we
it,
just
stop it,
colleagues
stop
to you?
Stop it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Two of my favorite colleagues. Two of my favorite people that I'm forced to spend
Oof.
time with.
That's
I'm joking. I am joking.
Sad.
How about
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
Two of my favorite people. How's that?
Ah,
We'll leave
okay.
it at that. Perfect.
I can go die happy now.
Curls, you're a man that travels often.
Sure.
Travels quite a bit.
Sure.
Could you tell me one of the most extreme / funny stories that have not seen the light of day on the internet?
Oh my days and nights. Wow,
No pressure.
Wow. Well, I mean, I tell you what is interesting, right? I try and hold it together sometimes and try
Yeah.
and think that I'm this man of the world. I'm basically an idiot, right? Let's nip that in the bud.
Why?
Second,
How come?
well, here's a prime example. So, in fact, I definitely haven't said this, but like as you guys know, I left last week to go back to Sydney for a couple of days.
Yes.
And it was Thursday night, right? I walked home. We all went out for a lovely dinner.
Yep.
I got home probably at 8 o'clock and I was walking through K Road. Matariki was on, music
Yes.
was pumping. I was like, God, this is awesome. This is awesome. Shame that I'm up in a few hours to go to the airport. So,
Yeah.
checked my phone and thought I better check in. I'd only booked the flight for the week before.
No.
Booked the flight for the week before. I was
Girl.
fuming. So I was like, this is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So I paid an extra bit of money to go the next day instead.
wild.
So I had to stay an extra 24 hours. But went out, had a great matariki, or had some nice drinks. Yeah, it was lovely. It was really, really nice. But yeah, I think to be honest, there are some stories which, I mean, they're certainly not suitable for this podcast. Not in that way, just like a bit graphic and intense. Like I've had some nasty injuries before. Like really, really bad. Like I've definitely got unwell at certain points traveling and just made an absolute fool out of myself. And I think with my accent, we are English people. We are received differently depending on where we are in the world. You know, some people they're like, "Oh, this guy's going to be crazy." Other people are like, "Oh, this guy's going to be crazy." You know, it's So I think it depends where you go, but yeah, wow, there's some crazy responses. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because recently you were in Sydney.
Yes.
Maybe the more interesting part about Sydney is Western Sydney.
Wow. Yeah.
How's Western Sydney?
Western Sydney is good, man. Western Sydney is, of course, for those who don't know, is like the South Auckland of Australia, you know. So obviously Aotearoa has South Auckland and it has, you know, definitely like, it's an interesting area. For me, it's really close to my heart because, to be honest, and I really mean this, I'm not just paying lip service to it. I actually wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for South Auckland because I used to make a lot of bedroom-based YouTube videos where I'd be chatting to the camera about this, that, and the other. I mean, after so long, everyone telling me go to South Auckland.
Yeah.
Obviously knowing that or thinking that I wouldn't because it's such a thing when like the classic American girl comes here, she's in Queenstown, like, oh my God.
Gentrifying the whole area.
New Zealand is my place. And everyone's like, hey girl, go to Otara, you're going to love it. Like it's so good, right?
Wild.
So I thought,
Wilded.
so I went to South Auckland, you know, I went to Otara, Mangere, Papa Toi Toi. That's on my first trip.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the videos just went to a whole new level. So I really owe South Auckland a lot. But in answer to your question, Western Sydney is a whole different ball game. Like
I love it.
I think it's so
You
cool.
love
But
it.
I think what's interesting is that South Auckland, for me, is still very much interwoven into the fabric of Auckland, right?
Yes.
Like Auckland is quite stratified. It's quite separated. It takes a while to get from one place to another. But in Sydney, you have a very, very clear distinction between like the east, which is like Bondi, you know, those sort of like fancy neighborhoods, and then the west is just this sprawling urban, I mean, basket of madness. Like,
That
it
is
is.
wild.
It's like
Yeah.
different universes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I was in Sydney last year in February.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Oh,
I
nice.
I stayed in the city
Yeah.
near like Olympic Park,
Yeah, beautiful.
but since like day one, we went to Western Sydney and we couldn't stay out of there. We kept going there, back there every day. And especially I think it was, I don't know what time of year it was, but I think every night they had like close the street and it'd be like a long street market. Maybe in Punch Bowl, I'm not pretty sure.
Punch Bowl's a good spot, man. I think that the thing is, man, you've hit the nail on the head. It's like it's one of those things where essentially, no matter where you go in the world, right, it's the same story all over the world.
Yeah.
You have the areas where, let's be honest, people have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And of course, there's going to be like low crime, good schools, quite peaceful, blah, blah, blah. And that's all good. That's all well and good. But the areas where, dare I say it, people live a little bit more on hard times.
Yeah.
It's a cultural melting pot. Things like food, things like company, family, parties, they are so much more important to those communities because obviously, you know, in our sort of like privileged, or maybe not even our, like in the privileged neighborhoods, it's a bit more sort of like, oh yeah, maybe let's go to a party on Friday, or maybe I might cancel. Whereas in these areas, it's like, cool, party Friday, done. Like people live in the moment much more, and communal events are more important, and therefore, as an outsider looking in, God, it's just more fun. Like it's just more fun.
Totally.
Yeah, it really, really is. Yeah, I love it. I love it, man.
For sure.
Beautiful.
Let's get into before we get into the news article, J1 asks, what's the best Hungy location?
Do you know what? See, this is why I found it difficult. In this country, to get good Maori kai, you got to hunt, right?
Yeah.
Samoan shops, there's plenty, but Maori kai, you've really, really, really got to hunt. There is one in Wellington called CJ's Hangi, which is good, very, very good. Up here in Auckland, you've got the Hangi shop in Otahuhu, which is beautiful. That's the first place I had boil up. But honestly, I know it's going to sound like an obvious answer, but if you want a proper Hangi, you got to find someone doing it. You're not going to find it commercially. You've got to find an auntie or someone's uncle, and it's just going to be great.
Can I just say, you say things so well.
Oh,
Like,
no, that was lovely.
Right? Like,
what about
he
me?
pronounced.
Yeah.
Always.
He doesn't even like properly well, you kind of half live here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But
Not in
you
Auckland,
say
though,
things so well.
Well, thanks, No. I really appreciate that. I think, do you know what I think it's come from? I think it's come from having my surname mispronounced my entire life. And so I always think to myself, like, I don't like that.
Suddenly you're enunciating everything to the T.
Too much sometimes.
I know too much about that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
All right, let's get into the news article. The newsletter. Your attention, please. Subscribe now, please. The first article is about Kodak, the rise and fall of Kodak. Now, I don't know about Nell, but for me, I think Kodak is a little older than me. Like, I never really got to catch what Kodak was. We have Carter, who just turned 18. When he didn't even recognize the word Kodak. He was like Kodak Black the rapper. And I was like, no, Kodak camera.
Okay.
Kodak Black? Yeah.
He had never heard of the word Kodak.
Do you know what? It's interesting because I've got to check myself on this one, because the only reason why I know Kodak so well, so where I grew up, there was the Kodak headquarters of the UK. It was called the Kodak Tower. And I had a friend whose dad worked for Kodak.
Yeah.
And you'd see the logo here and there. But thinking about it, other than those two very specific childhood references, I'm 30, right? So I've been around a lot longer than Carter, but I've got to think to myself, like, actually, would I even be able to tell you what Kodak does, even as someone who was around when they were in their heyday?
Yeah.
I know, obviously, it's photography, printing, digital printing, whatever. But yeah, I couldn't really tell you their main function, to be honest. So I've got definitely empathy with yourselves and and Carter for sure.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we all know it's a big brand, or it used to be a big brand anyway. I know my parents used to have a Kodak camera, but like when I was born, like let's say around the early 2000s, it was the move to digital cameras became a thing. And so Kodak was very heavy on the whole print, like take a photo and print it out almost. What's that brand? Polaroid kind of thing?
Polaroid, yeah. For sure.
And especially down in like the early 2000s, even mid 2000s, people just went head first into like digital cameras, handy cams, Sony, all that. So it's just really interesting. So you've never like held a Kodak camera or nothing like that?
Not to my knowledge, but I think, you know, you're absolutely bang on, is that with Kodak, it's like, yes, people, you know, they shifted, right? And sometimes you either set the trend or you follow the trend. And, you know, if you're big enough to be the likes of Apple, right?
Yeah.
As a company, they dictate to us what we want, right? So like the iPad came out, for example, and they're like, hey, you know that phone you've got and the laptop? here's a flat version, here's a flat square version.
Yeah.
And then I don't want that. Who's going to buy that? Well,
Yeah.
turns out everyone is going to buy that, right? So if you're big enough, you can dictate a trend. But if you're the likes of Kodak, you have to follow the trend, and you either adapt or, dare I say it, you plummet. And they clearly plummeted, and it's quite telling that actually. It's interesting you say about the rapper, because for Gen Z, I feel like that reference is the rapper, but for millennials, the reference is Pitbull famously using Kodak to rhyme with Kodak.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, this is where it was like a joke about.
Okay.
It was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and someone was like, "How funny! I forgot about the word." Someone's like, "Mr. Pitbull reckons he's Mr. Worldwide," yet in the next line he rhymes Kodak with Kodak or something, and I was like, "Oh, yo, Kodak! I remember those guys."
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, what it says in the article is that like a disruption in the market makes or breaks your business, kind of thing.
Definitely.
Being like such a pioneer in the camera business, it's crazy how, I don't know, like maybe it's not too common to have like big companies that big almost like fall into obscurity. Like there's like especially like where I stay at, there's like a local mall who used to be like a specifically like Kodak camera like conversion thing.
Yeah.
And that closed down a couple of years ago. It's just it's
There's no
kind of
need
telling.
for it.
Yeah.
I think as well, what's interesting is that, like, again, just to go back to Apple, we have everything in this machine now, right? In this device,
Yes.
like even,
Wild, right?
and it makes me think about like my parents' generation and whatever, because obviously, as I say, even though I'm 30, like I'm the same as you guys, right? I grew up with the internet. I grew up with all this stuff being so convenient, and even to have a calculator, right? Like think about years ago, you'd literally have to get. I know we're talking about a very, very obvious point here, but I'll bring it back. My point is, you'd have to get a pen and paper, you'd have to do the maths yourself, or you'd have to literally get a calculator, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when the phones came out with a calculator on, everyone was like, "Oh, that's cool. You've got a calculator. Oh, yeah, wicked." But now, if you didn't have that, you're like, "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?"
Yeah.
So my point is, everything that Kodak can do, we've got in our pocket
For sure.
So if they don't somehow follow that, what's the point? You've either got a Polaroid or your phone.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if they've tried it, but I feel like they should have like dived like big on being the camera partner for phones.
Definitely.
Like think like Sony Ericsson phones, like the Samsung. I don't know if Samsung came out with like an Android device that was like half camera and it was a half screen.
I recall this. Yeah. That's like you say, they lent in to something, or Kodak should have lent into something they were good at.
Yeah.
Because also, let's not they're a technology company as well as a camera company.
Yeah, of
They
course.
would have had so many smart minds. And I tell you what, I bet you any money that there are some people who are working some very, very high up jobs who were previously Kodak executives, right?
sure. Yeah.
Because even though the business direction wasn't good, there'd have been some smart minds in that place.
Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll be all over the world right now. Yeah,
For sure.
crazy.
That's Kodak. Kodak, come back, please.
We miss you, Kodak.
Actually, Kodak, if you could sponsor us, that'd be amazing. I've been tasked with the task of finding a sponsor for YAP. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, that's
I'm
pretty
trying
cool.
trying to find a sponsor.
Oh, we'll do that. That's awesome.
Sponsors, hit us up. Kodak, I've always loved you.
I love Kodak.
I'm gonna be saying that to every brand we've covered today.
Kodak or Pitbull, if you're listening. If you're listening, Mr.
Amen.
Worldwide. Yeah,
Amen.
Either or.
Never say never. I'll just move on to the next article real quick. I'd assume you'd know a bit more about this than I do, but the Australian creative director Ben Golick has recently created a viral mock billboard of Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, for leaving. What day was it? Leaving a D-Day event.
D-Day, yeah.
So what is D-Day?
So D-Day is essentially a day that marks what's known as the Normandy landings, which is basically when the British and the Americans, we went onto the beaches in France to fight against the Germans who were invading. And D-Day is basically seen as like a victorious day. It was like a real turning point in World War II, where essentially the Allied sides came together to defeat the other side.
Yes.
And regardless of the historical context, it's basically a day that is seen as the utmost service to people who are in the military. Now, yes, we can talk all day long about how today that message is hijacked by those who have more extreme views, and, you know, blind sort of faith in military can get people in all sorts of sticky trouble. However, regardless of all of that, nobody on this planet can deny the sacrifices that were made for the fact that we can sit here today,
For sure.
3 people from essentially 3 different countries, or born in 3 different countries.
I was born here.
Oh, my
Yeah,
apologies.
my fault.
My apologies.
I'm sorry, guys.
I thought you were born over there.
No, I
man.
was born here.
I was born here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I knew that. Yeah, obviously. Well, I just made myself look. Hey, guys, I've made myself look like an absolute fool.
No.
So that's good.
You're good.
Okay, here we go. Let me rephrase.
You're good.
3 people with different heritage.
Yeah, different
There we
backgrounds,
go.
I
There we
guess,
go.
yeah.
There we go.
Right.
Sit here.
Good save.
Yeah, perfect save. Sorry, bro. I got you.
You're good.
We can sit here. We can have discussions openly about anything we want, right?
For sure.
So when you are the leader of a country, any kind of event that involves the military, you has to have your utmost respect and deference, right? And it's really, really telling that at the D-Day event, which was potentially in France, I think this year, where it normally is, Rishi Sunak left early, and there is a picture of Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France, Olaf Scholz, who is the German prime minister, and I believe one other, maybe Giorgia Meloni from Italy, all together, and no Rishi Sunak. And him being there would have been this perfect moment of a reminder to the British public of like, hey, just remember who I deal with, right? I'm one of these guys. But instead, he left to do an interview in the UK with Paul Mason. And in the interview, this is the crazy thing. At the start of the interview, he says, sorry, I'm late. D-Day ceremony ran over. No.
Ran over.
You left the D-Day ceremony early to be here. Yeah,
Oh
madness.
my word.
Yeah, he's a silly man.
Yeah, because the second that happened on the day of, Ben Golick, the Australian creative, came up with like a mock, the billboard that is on the thing that he left them on the beaches with like a little figure of Rishi Sunak running away, and that gained so much traction that just recently, I think over the last week, it's manifested into becoming an actual real life billboard in the middle of London.
This is it. And so that quote, he left them on the beaches, is a play on a very, very famous quote by Winston Churchill, which is, we'll fight them on the beaches. Yeah. So essentially, have you heard that before? That quote? Okay. So essentially it came from, the public was very rightly scared of the threat from Germany, blah, blah, blah. And Churchill, who, very post-war, terrible, controversial figure. That's a conversation for another day. But during the war, my gosh, the man was incredible. And he basically he did this rousing speech which stirred the whole nation, which was like, we'll fight them we'll fight them here, we'll fight them there, we'll fight them on the beaches. And he essentially said like, you know what? Bring it on. Yeah. We might be under threat right now, but we're not scared. We'll fight you anywhere. So essentially, they are contrasting the prime minister of then, saying we'll fight them on the beaches, the prime minister now who will just
running away,
leave them on the beaches. Yeah, it is, and it's a real. And regardless of any of your political views, regardless of what side you fall on, regardless of anything, you cannot deny that what that man did was an act of cowardice. It was shocking.
That's
it really was.
crazy.
Because I think the whole point of the interview was to kind of like build some PR around the election time now, obviously. And I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? Somebody asks, what's Crow's thoughts on the current UK elections?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting time because essentially the current government that are in have been around for my entire adult life, right? So they got into power in 2010, the current government, Conservative government. So I was 17, right? So for my entire adult life, all I've known is this Conservative government. And whilst I'm always and forever will be very, very careful not to have any political views publicly, I will state facts that I have suffered directly as a result of this government. When they came into power, they tripled the tuition fees, for example. So we pay £9,000, 18,000 New Zealand dollars per year, just for tuition. That's before you get onto the maintenance grants and the accommodation or anything crazy. So they radicalized me, right? In that sense, 2016, they pull us out of the European Union. I can no longer live, work, and retire in 27 different countries across Europe. So I think, okay, I better go to Australia, New Zealand. So they messed up my education, they messed up my job and career prospects, and they crashed the economy. So my mum and dad back home, their pensions are worthless. My sister, who wants to further herself in her career, and she's doing very well, they make life more difficult for her. So regardless of any political views, I'm not going to say who anyone should vote for or who I'm going to vote for or anything. I will say the current government has made my life significantly more difficult and less enjoyable, which is a big factor in me choosing to leave the country. And I will say that before anyone says, but I've moved overseas, how can I have an opinion? Well, you can do a single proxy vote where you nominate someone else. So my dear mother will be voting for me today.
Fair enough. How does it work, the elections? Is it just one day votes and that's it? Or?
That's it, yes. You do one day of voting. And what's interesting is on the news, obviously for weeks up to the election, it's wall-to-wall coverage, right? Constant every day. But there is a law from, I believe it's 7 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Yeah.
on that day, you cannot mention the election on the news, right?
Yes.
I believe it's the same in New Zealand.
Yeah, we've
right?
got a thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like
That's so interesting.
but it's so bizarre, right? Because you see it for weeks, and you go on that headline, and it's like, oh, there's been a crash on the motorway. You're like, oh, is that really headline news today?
Yeah.
Like it's so bad. But it's good because then you can't sway and influence any votes. But yeah, it takes place over one day, and the results are announced. So basically, at 10 p.m., you have what's called an exit poll. Where you basically it's like a really accurate figure of how they think it's going to be, and then constituency by constituency, they declare, who the result is. And it's funny because Newcastle and Sunderland, right?
Yeah.
So my football team is Newcastle and Sunderland. They are bitter rivals, like bitter.
Yes.
And they are also rivals with who declares the result first.
Yeah.
It's always, for some reason, I could not tell you why, it is always either Newcastle or Sunderland who declares the result first. So it'll be them, and then from roughly 6, and everyone, what you always, you stay up all night. And you stay up all night and you watch the results coming in with your mates, and then you gradually get either more and more depressed or more and more excited, depending on which one.
Because they're kind of counted live, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
We have the same thing over here as well.
I was going to say, it's let's be honest. I mean, New Zealand's political legal system is based off the UK, so it's largely similar. To be honest,
for sure.
Yeah.
Fair. I think just like going back to just to wrap it up with the whole billboard thing. I think it's like the perfect timing for it to work. I think that. Because like the conservative scene has been running it for like maybe since 2010. You said
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the boat has been swinging too far that side. So when an extreme, I don't want to say extreme, but like let's say an opposing side is really attacking this side, too many people are resonating with this side. So now it really culminated in like the perfect tweet. Like I think the tweet, just a mock billboard, like. Open up Canva and write up some couple words, and a figure got like 1.2 million views in the first 24 hours of the tweet, which is insane.
That's mad. I think as well though, like especially when it comes to politics, like if you speak literally about things, people don't listen because you're just adding to the noise, right? Like if I was to say on the camera, oh, you should vote for this person's bad, blah, blah, everyone is instantly like, ugh. But if you do something like they've done on that billboard, you make a point that is interesting. Okay, maybe not funny, but like it's quirky, it's interesting, it's emotive, and it's so simple. It's just there. You're not sitting there going, "Hey, here's a list of reasons why you should do something." It's a simple visual image, and suddenly everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you nailed it!"
Yeah, it's perfect
for sure.
Perfect. Well, guys, we've got 2 minutes left. Give us any and all your questions. Nell, if you have any things you want to talk about in the next 90 seconds, go for it. Louis does ask though. He does ask. He's telling us, Curls, I got some kina for you.
Oh, kina.
What's
kina is it's Maori.
Sorry,
no, it's all right. Kina is Maori kai, and it's basically like essentially it's a sea urchin, right?
Okay.
And it's like a
the big prickly thing.
That's it.
With like spikes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
You crack it open, and do you know what? So I've had kina before a couple of times. But I've never had it fresh. I've only ever had it like from the fishmonger. But let me tell you now, it's such a unique thing because you have it, right? And it's sort of like, you're like, oh, that's quite nice. When you swallow it, and you're like, whoa, that's a strong taste.
Yeah.
However, to anyone watching, if you never had kina before, this is my tip. You want to get yourself lightly toasted, white buttered bread.
Okay.
Kina, spread it on it slightly. Kewpie mayo. You know the Japanese mayo?
Yes.
A little bit of that. I'm telling you now, it's delicious. Promise you.
For sure. On that note, do you guys have any final words?
Can I say, I'm loving Nell's red coat today. It's really nice. It's great. That's my final word. Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nell, any final words?
I just hope you guys have a lovely day.
Stream what was by Nell. She told me to say that. So
definitely.
Stream what was.
I did
she
it.
literally has a gun pointed to my head right now.
It's a good song, and actually, I put it on Instagram, and this girl literally messaged me saying like, "That's incredible. I have goosebumps. What a voice."
That was the cutest.
She's so
thing
sweet, Cynthia. If you're watching Cynthia, you're a legend. Yeah, it was cool.
Subscribe to the newsletter. Your attention, please. Watch and subscribe to YAP Podcast, whatever you listen to podcasts. And on that note, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Bye.